Hey guys, so today's video is just going to be a really dorky ramble, but before I get started I just wanted to show you my outfit today, which I love. I really like putting together outfits, so this is a new dress that I got from TK Maxx. It has a cute little tie, and I have also put on these amazing nails. Just gonna try and get that to focus. They are little watermelons and watermelon disco balls, so I'm a big fan of that. It feels very summery. Okay, so in today's video I'm going to talk about another one of my special interests, which is the television show Dawson's Creek. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, Dawson's Creek is a television show that ran from 1998 to 2003. It was a WB television series, and it's set in the fictional town of Cape Side, which is meant to be in New England, but they actually filmed it in North Carolina. And it follows the lives of primarily 4 teenagers, which is obviously Dawson, as the title suggests, his friend Joey, Jen and Pacey, and the series is created by a man called Kevin Williamson, who is, other than Dawson's Creek, he's best known for the Scream film series. He's like a big fan of horror, and Dawson's Creek is meant to be kind of loosely a depiction of his sort of like adolescence and growing up, and Dawson is based on him, and Dawson is like a big movie buff and wants to become a movie director, just like Kevin Williamson did, and then went on to achieve his dreams. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the show in general, but I'm mostly going to hone in on one character, which is a Mr. Pacey John Witter, played by Joshua Jackson, who I just think is like the perfect fictional man. So let me just find a picture or two of him. Let's see. So this is Pacey Witter. Maybe not the most flattering haircut. I'll find a few more. This is Pacey and Dawson. Okay, I also have some bubble tea today, which will fuel me through my ramblings. Okay, so Dawson's Creek ran for 6 seasons. Yeah, I kind of discovered it as a teenager. My mother recommended it to me and I watched it on, I think it was maybe Channel 5 or something like that. So the show is kind of like what you would call a teen melodrama slash slice of life slash coming of age, and it focuses around one Dawson Leary, who lives in Cape Side with his friends. He lives with his best friend Joey Josephine Potter, and his other best friend is Pacey Witter, who I'll talk about. And in the start of season 1, a new girl, Jen Lindley, moves into town from New York, and Dawson is like immediately smitten with her, which sets up a very kind of, you know, classic love triangle, because Joey then realizes she has feelings for Dawson. And the show, like in true teenage fashion, it kind of flips around between, like, you know, a lot of different characters dating. You have Dawson dating Jen, Dawson dating Joey, eventually Pacey and Joey date, so there's a lot of, like, you know, intermingling. And then in season 2, some other characters come along who are in it for a while as well, called Andy and Jack McPhee, Andy being short for Andrea, that's a female character, and they are brother and sister. And Jack's character was also quite groundbreaking at the time because he came out as gay, and his kiss in, I think it's season 3, was like one of the first like gay kisses to be broadcast on American television. And I remember reading at the time that they originally, like, the network only agreed to let them like shoot the kiss from like across the street, and they kind of just kept pushing their luck until finally it was like filmed in the same way that, you know, a male and female character kissing would be, which was a really big deal for the time. So that's really cool. That's a little, like, you know, a lovely moment of Dawson's Creek history that I think people who aren't interested in the show might not know about. So, but yeah, today I'm going to talk about Mr. Pacey Witter. So Pacey Witter is a very different character from Dawson, so I'm going to have to kind of explain the character of Dawson to make you better understand the kind of contrast between them. So Dawson Leary, the protagonist of the show, he's kind of like the golden child. He's very sweet, he's very well behaved, he's a bit of a dork, he's meant to be a bit kind of unpopular. They kind of tease in season 1 that his nickname when he was younger was like Oompa Loompa or something. And he loves film, he really, really loves Steven Spielberg. He's like this sort of bright-eyed, idealist dreamer character, which obviously that has like really good elements to it and really bad elements to it, and his best friend Joey, who's a bit more cynical and a bit more grounded, is kind of there to sort of balance him out a little bit and point out that, you know, sometimes he sees things too black and white, sometimes he's too much of a dreamer, and, you know, his parents, or at least it seems like that at first, but the season kind of unpacks that as well. At first his parents have this perfect marriage, so, you know, he's like the only child that's doted upon, and, you know, he's a bit, I guess, spoiled as a result. And then in contrast, you have his best friend, Pacey Witter. And Pacey's meant to be a bit of this, like, no-hoping, you know, he's not like a bad kid, he's not like, you know, he's not like badly behaved, but he's a bit of a like class clown. He doesn't really work very hard, he doesn't really have a very high opinion of himself. And you find out later on in the season that the reason for that is because Pacey is like the youngest of 5 children, and his father is like the local like head of the police station, and his older brother Doug is also a police officer, and they all kind of like, ever since Pacey was very young, just like treat him like crap, and like, you know, they think he's no good, they think he's not going to go anywhere in life, and Pacey's just like really internalized all of these messages about himself. So I think a lot of his behavior as a result of that is like this defense mechanism where he's like, you know, if I treat myself like I suck and like I just make a lot of jokes and I don't take myself very seriously, then it's almost like I can do that before anyone else has formed that opinion of me. You know, he's like, I'm gonna get there first, like I'm gonna be the one to kind of make a joke out of myself before anyone else can do that. So I think that's like a really interesting starting point for his character. And it does obviously cause like various tensions with Dawson as well, like between Dawson and Pacey, because, you know, Pacey is like, he knows that Dawson like has always been like really loved by his parents and like always had this like view that he can achieve whatever he wants. Like he's never been held back by his own kind of insecurities in the way that Pacey has. Which also, I think, becomes the reason why Pacey and Joey become, like, more realistic love interests for each other than Joey and Dawson, because Joey's also got this really difficult family background where she, her father went to jail for, like, dealing drugs, and she lost her mother at, like, the age of 9 to cancer. So, like, both Joey and Pacey are kind of these, like, underdog characters who, you know, they've had, like, a really difficult family life, and they're both, I think Joey's, like, trying really hard to achieve in spite of that. Like, she's like, I want to get out of Cape Side, I want to, you know, I want to get away from it all, whereas Pacey is sort of like, you know, the opposite has happened to him, where he thinks he can never get out of Cape Side, and he thinks that, like, you know, he's always going to be this kind of slacker and this loser and so on. But yeah, that's kind of the starting point for Pacey's character, so it, you know, obviously is a great foundation for his character to grow and develop into something else. So before I carry on, I'm just going to show you a picture so you have a better idea of who I'm talking about. I also didn't explain who all the actors were, which was really bad. So this is Dawson Leary, played by James Van Der Beek. This is Joey Potter, played by, obviously, the famous Katie Holmes. This is Pacey Witter, played by Joshua Jackson. And finally, we have Jen Lindley, played by the also very famous Michelle Williams. So that's the 4 gang. So yeah, I think to explain Pacey's journey and why I think he becomes such a strong character and such a, like, incredible, like, fictional, like, dream man, I need to kind of explain, like, the sort of key points of his journey and his arc. So I'm kind of going to touch on some of his key character moments throughout the show. So the first one comes at the very, very start of the show, when Pacey decides to go for the new teacher in town, Tamara Jacobs, who is his English teacher. Now, I'm never a fan of... It's very popular in American shows to have love storylines between teachers and students. You've seen it in Gossip Girl. Pretty Little Liars. Like, it just happens over and over again, and I think it's kind of more normalized to see these like storylines between adults and teenagers played off as being okay in American TV in a way that's not as much in the UK. So I'm not really sure why that is, but this isn't really a great storyline for Pacey to start off with, and I've listened to a lot of Dawson's Creek podcasts, being the like nerd that I am, and a few people who were watching the show for the first time had said that they didn't understand, like from the start of season 1 at least, they didn't understand why Pacey was meant to be this great character. And I think you don't really see it at first. Like, he is kind of, you know, he is this stereotypical, not very well-rounded kind of, you know, a wisecracking class clown sort of character, and the fact that he goes for Tamara, obviously, yeah, it's not a good storyline, but a good thing does come out of it, in that Pacey does like really mature by the end of it. So he has this like secret relationship with Tamara. He loses his virginity to her in like only the 3rd episode of Dawson's Creek ever, which, like, you know, I feel like they set out and were immediately like, we're going to kind of start tackling the things that teenagers are interested in, which is usually sex. So yeah, Pacey loses his virginity to Tamara, but things start to get a little bit risky when, you know, he confides in Dawson about this relationship in like the men's bathroom, and somebody overhears him in a stall, and it all spreads around the school, and Tamara is like obviously furious with Pacey, and she's like, you know, this could cost me my job, people aren't supposed to know about this. And ultimately Pacey is forced to go up to like they I think it's like the school board or something, hold this big meeting, and he has to go up and say, like, I made this all up, it's just like a teen boy's fantasy, like nothing ever happened between me and Tamara. And yeah, it's like a really big moment for Pacey, because I think, like, you know, I feel like even a lot of kind of more mature 15-16-year-olds at that age, you know, they would have found it quite hard, like, not even like taking into account the fact that, you know, Pacey would get a bit of a reputation as like this stud if people found out, but also like just in general to have to lie and say, like, you know, I didn't have this relationship, I made it all up, I was just trying to look big. You know, like, obviously that's going to damage Pacey's reputation and make him look like even more of a loser, and sort of, you know, it's just not good for him. So like the fact that he makes this sacrifice for Tamara is like, you know, the first sign of kind of the guy that Pacey's going to become. And we see a little bit more of that later in season 1 as well. So around, I think it's episode 10 or 11, but I can't remember exactly. He enters this beauty contest alongside Joey. Both of them, well, Joey's entered it because she wants to win a lot of money. Like, she doesn't believe in beauty contests, but she's like, I could really use this money to help me get into college. So she's like, you know, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to suck it up, put on the dress and the lipstick and do the whole thing. And then Pacey, for some reason, finds out that he could enter it as well. Well, he didn't think that he was allowed, but he was like, men should be allowed to enter it too, so he did. And he finds out kind of like, you know, before he's meant to go on stage and do like the talent portion, that, you know, he's like a bit of a laughing stock, and everyone's like, Pacey, you know, there's no chance that you're actually going to win this, right? Like, they're never going to give a man the like prize. So like, he's really like, you know, frustrated by the kind of injustice of that, but he still goes up there and kind of, he does this big like dorky Braveheart speech with like the kind of full face paint on, and he kind of like takes it on the chin. And I think this is one of the things that I really love about Pacey's character, is like kind of the flip side of this like class clown behavior, which is that he's really good at knowing how to sort of use this like element for humor and poking fun at himself, you know, to either like rise above like difficult moments, whether that's like, you know, because he's the butt of the joke or because other people are at risk. Like, he's really good at kind of lightening the mood, lightening the tension. And I think that characters like, well, both Dawson and especially Joey, who are like really serious, and one of the big things about Dawson's Creek that I love is like all of the characters are very, very wordy and witty, in a similar way to Buffy actually, where they're constantly like making wisecracks and they're very verbose. And a lot of people either love or hate Dawson's Creek for that, but I've read some really great articles that it was actually kind of one of the first TV shows to do that, and to kind of treat teenagers like, you know, like they were as intelligent as adults, and like, you know, that they had a lot of introspection and a lot of anxieties, and, you know, that they were really well thought out people, and I think that that's really special, and it's one of the things I really love about the show. And I think that even though Pacey isn't as much like that as obviously Dawson and Joey, who are both very, like, one of the kind of, again, one of the contrasts, and the reason I keep bringing these other characters up is because they're such interesting contrasts to Pacey. And Dawson and Joey are both very, like, we think a lot and we talk about our feelings a lot, but they don't take action. So Pacey is like the action guy, you know, like, he does things, he doesn't always think about them, he follows his gut, and he's really good at pushing kind of Joey and Dawson to do that as well, and to sort of criticize them when they're not doing that. So again, he's like really good at kind of, you know, being like the don't overthink this kind of characters, because sometimes both Dawson and Joey just kind of think themselves into these circles, and like they're constantly intellectualizing their feelings without always actually feeling them and processing them and really like allowing themselves to recognize what their feelings mean. And Pacey's really there to kind of, you know, for better or worse sometimes, he's there to really push them to actually look at themselves and what they feel and what they want, and to actually do things. So yeah, he's really good for that. I need some more bubble tea. So season 2 is quite an interesting and a strong one for Pacey's character development, and that's where you really start to see him come into his own. It kind of starts in a bit of a cheesy way where Pacey is, for some god knows why reason, getting these like bleach highlights put into his hair, and he's got this like thing for this girl called Christy at his school who's like a cheerleader, and he has this little like song that, like little rhyme that he mumbles to himself where he's like, Christy, Christy, the thought of you makes me misty, or something. But he's really into this girl. It seems to be for quite superficial reasons of just like she's really pretty and she's really popular, but I think that feels quite more typical of the teenage experience, where it's like, you know, you don't really know this person, but you've kind of fixated on them and decided that, like, you know, they're amazing and you need to be with them. So that's how Pacey starts things. And yeah, we have kind of a bit of an amusing, not quite a regression, but some more typical Pacey behaviour at the start of season 2, where he meets Andy McPhee of the McPhee siblings, Andy and Jack. And Andy is, she's a really fun character. She's very much the opposite of Pacey. She's very highly strung, she's very type A, she's like a goody two-shoes overachiever, quite an anxious person. And you kind of come to find out that she's got her own tragic family backstory, wherein her brother, Tim, died. I can't remember if they tell it was some kind of accident. And the family's all really like traumatized from this, obviously. And the mother has become really mentally unwell, and the father is like, he's off doing like business all the time to like make money for the family, but you kind of get the feeling that it's also that he needs to emotionally distance himself from the trauma. So like he's just not there for Andy and Jack and the mother. Like he's off, you know, he's off being the family breadwinner, but he's not there to emotionally support them. So Andy and Jack are in quite a difficult situation at the start. They both have a lot of money as well, so when Pacey meets Andy, like, you know, part of the conflict between them is Pacey thinks like Andy's just this spoilt rich girl because he doesn't know all this like backstory. So you know, Andy kind of eventually takes him to task over that preconception of her. But the two of them gradually begin this sweet romance, you know, as Pacey realises that Andy is, you know, she's obviously a very beautiful woman, but she's also, and I say woman because I think Meredith Monroe was like my age when she played Andy, or she was definitely quite a lot older than some of the other, like a lot of the characters, which I like, were about, I think they were all about 19-ish when they started filming season 1, and they're meant to be 16, so I quite like that because it's not like a huge, like it's still, you know, an age difference, but it's a lot better than a lot of American teen shows where they're all like, you know, in the mid to late 20s pretending to be like 16. So what was I saying? Yes, Andy and Pacey begin a romance, and this is like really healthy for Pacey because Andy is this really focused young woman, like she's very driven. I think she wants to get into one of the like top schools like Yale or Harvard or an Ivy Leaguer basically. And, you know, I think it's partly like pressure from her father and her family, but I think she also just genuinely really wants that for herself. And she does also start to struggle with some of her own mental health issues, which I'll get into in a sec, but she's really good for Pacey because she sees that Pacey has this potential in him. She sees that he's actually this really intelligent guy, And partly the school system is failing him because I think that they don't really, you know, like everyone has different types of learning styles. And I think Pacey, like, he doesn't fit into what is kind of the stereotypical way that schools try to teach kids. So like he's kind of falling through the cracks for that reason. But a lot of it is also like he's got this really low self-esteem. So Andy kind of comes in and really like transforms his life. And Pacey even like talks about this to his father. Like, you know, he tells his father that Andy saved me. She really helped me believe in myself and achieve. And this kind of comes at like I have a lot of my favourite Dawson's Creek moments are Pacey moments because he gets some like really amazing speeches, but he has this amazing speech where I think his father's quite drunk and they're on the beach, and I can't remember if they've been to like an event or what was happening, but Pacey like takes the opportunity to confront his father about the fact that his father never believed in Pacey. And, you know, Pacey's like really emotional. He's like, you know, when did you give up on me? Like, was it when I was like 5? And it's a really, well, I like Joshua Jackson, just like, he's such an incredible actor, and he absolutely brings his A game, and it's such a like beautiful kind of moment where you can really see like Pacey's vulnerability, because Pacey keeps up this wall a lot of the time in the form of him being this class clown, and, you know, it's the moments when he really lets that down with Andy, later with Joey, a little bit with Dawson, but I think, you know, he has a lot of kind of conflicts with Dawson. But, you know, Andy really believes in him in a way that his father never did. And, you know, she really changes him. She helps him work harder. She helps him believe in himself. She kind of helps him become like a better man, to the point where even other characters like Dawson and Joey notice it. And Dawson has so many like crappy moments throughout the show and is kind of unfortunately hated, but one of the moments, like, he kind of doesn't really take Pacey's like character growth seriously, and you know he says, I think at one point he says something along the lines of like, you know, I think he's like he's not convinced that it's gonna stick, or like he doesn't think it's real, and he's like, you know, yeah, and I think he's quite threatened by it as well, which is just classic Dawson behavior. Like, you know, Dawson's always been the good one. He's always been the kind of, you know, he's always been the smart one. He's always been the one to shine. And he doesn't like the fact that Pacey starts to get this attention as well. But yeah, so Pacey confronts his father, and, you know, he's like, when did you give up on me? And it's such a like heartbreaking moment, and his father doesn't really have like an answer. But his father does admit that he is happy that Pacey has Andy, and that Andy has, you know, transformed him. And yeah, so it's not just that we see Andy transform Pacey, but we see Pacey really be a rock for Andy as well. And like their relationship, like every time I watch Dawson's Creek, even though I love the Pacey and Joey pairing a lot, like I just love Pacey and Andy so much that I'm kind of sad that the show, you know, decided that they had to break them up and, you know, move on to kind of other relationships and other storylines. Because I think that they're there for each other in such like profound ways, and Pacey like really supports Andy with her mental health struggles. And again, one of the beautiful Pacey moments in season 2, I believe it is when Andy's mother is like really struggling, and she kind of wanders into this like supermarket, and she doesn't know like why she's there or what she's doing, and kind of, she doesn't have dementia, but it kind of reminds me of that sort of like dementia type confusion where she doesn't really know what's going on. And Andy had been trying to get her mother out the shop, you know, because it's starting to cause a scene, and she's really like distressed and she doesn't know what to do. And Pacey like saves the day by being Pacey, which I think is like such a beautiful showcasing of like, you know, why it's so important that he is the way he is, and that even though he doesn't always see it, there are some real strengths to the person that he is and what he brings to the table. And what he does is he goes into the supermarket, and he just kind of starts like this like gentle, casual conversation with Andy's mother, which I think like probably a lot of medical professionals would say is actually the way to do it. Like, you know, you're not drawing attention to the fact there's a problem, like you're calming the person down, you're kind of bringing them back to kind of a ground level to sort of help them. And, you know, he's just like, oh, what are we shopping for today? And, you know, he's putting things in the basket, and he's like making this like sweet, jokey conversation with her. And he eventually kind of like turns it into like, he turns it in the direction of how like, oh, you know, she's thinking of making a sandwich, and he's like, oh, why don't you come make me a sandwich? And like, he's just really sweet and kind, and he kind of guides her out of the store, and it's this really beautiful moment. And I just don't really think that somebody else, like I don't think Dawson or Joey or obviously Andy could have done that. So it's like very unique to who Pacey is, that he really taps into this kind of, he has this empathy and this like emotional maturity in him that he can really use to sort of bring a lot of levity to difficult situations, and I think that's really special. Okay, so I'm going to move into sort of seasons 3 and 4 now. I will be honest, it has been a while since I have watched Dawson's Creek, so there might be little things that I forget, even though I feel like the like bulk of the show is just like embedded into my brain, into my soul. So season 2, I believe, ends with Pacey getting his heart broken, unfortunately. Andy, her mental health struggles start to become more and more real. I can't remember if they like give a specific sort of diagnosis in the show, like if it's meant to be like schizophrenia. I kind of get the impression that's what it is, or bipolar, I don't know. But yeah, Andy, she's becoming increasingly anxious. She's starting to have like hallucinations, and Pacey tries really hard to help her, but obviously, you know, a lot of it is really beyond his like understanding, his maturity level. Like he's just a 16-year-old boy, and he's never really dealt with anything like this before, so he tries to be there for Andy as much as he can. But ultimately she ends up checking into like a psychiatric facility for a while. And while she's there, she meets another boy her age, and you know, they bond over a lot of stuff. And, you know, even though she's really missing Pacey, I think she connects with this guy enough, and, you know, she's feeling vulnerable, and, you know, she's feeling lonely, and etc, etc. And they do sleep together, and Pacey, you know, she does eventually have to tell Pacey this, and he's just heartbroken, and they do break up as a result, even though Andy like really doesn't want them to. And Pacey is just like so heartbroken. So in season 3, Pacey starts to work on this boat as a distraction. I can't remember if he found this boat or if someone gave it to him. I think he found it or bought it. I'm sorry, I don't remember. But he calls this boat True Love, which is very on the nose and kind of, you know, kind of meant to represent his inner angsty teen heartbreak turmoil. And he works on this boat throughout season 3. And he doesn't really have like a romance in season 3 exactly. He's nursing his wounds, and he decides that Jen Lindley, who in some ways is meant to be a bit more similar to Pacey, like she's not as uptight as Joey and Dawson. Joey and Dawson. She's not as uptight as them. Jen's a bit more worldly, a bit more experienced, and her and Pacey decide that they're gonna just like, they're going to be friends with benefits, because, you know, they both like to have sex, they're both not virgins, and they're both like, well, you know, why don't we just do that, like, why not? But it never actually manifests. Like, I think they basically start like making out and stuff like that, but they just can't really like get into each other. They basically don't have the chemistry, and they're both kind of annoyed and frustrated about it, but like ultimately are like, well, you know, there's no point flogging a dead horse, let's just like, you know, let's just be friends. And Joey's quite like, both Joey and Dawson, like one of the downsides of their characters is they're both quite like judgy people. I think Joey a bit less than Dawson, because obviously, you know, she's gone through all this family stuff, so, you know, she's seen a bit more of like the kind of greys, the moral greys of the world than Dawson has. But they're still both quite like, they can be quite righteous when they want to be. So like Joey's a bit judgy about it, and she's like, you know, you shouldn't be doing this. But, you know, this is obviously also kind of the start of the very, very slow burn that becomes Joey and Pacey getting together, which, interestingly, I don't think the show ever planned for it, and season 3 is like a bit of a mess anyway. I think they didn't really know where they were going to take it at first. I don't know if it's because, I think Kevin Williamson had maybe stepped away from the show for a little while as well, which didn't help. So like the start of season 3 is like a lot of kind of weird nonsense revolving around like the cheerleaders and the football team, and it feels very like stereotypical high school drama, but like in all the wrong ways for Dawson's Creek. Like it doesn't really fit the vibe of what the show's about. So yeah, it kind of all gets like sidetracked by that, but then they kind of start to realize that actually like Joshua Jackson and Katie Holmes have got this like incredible chemistry, and they did date in real life. They're not still together, which is you know, a shame, I suppose. But it's like I kind of always like secretly love it when the characters like have that in real life, and you're like, oh, you know, the reason this chemistry is really like sparking is because it's, you know, it's because it's real. So yeah, they eventually become a couple. It takes a really long time, and obviously like the main obstacle for Joey is Dawson. Like Dawson and Pacey are really good friends. Joey thinks that, well, I mean, she thinks that Dawson will be devastated in general because they had dated, but also like doubly so because it's Pacey. And you know, she is right, Dawson like absolutely like loses his mind, like he blows up like to an insane degree when they start sort of secretly hooking up a bit, and then like eventually Dawson finds out and Joey breaks it off. Like she kind of takes the coward's way out, and she's not strong enough to stand up to Dawson. And you know, obviously Pacey's like really disappointed and sad about it. But by the end of the season, Pacey has got his boat ready and he's ready to like sail off for the summer, and he kind of just wants to forget about everything. And Joey, you know, finally comes to him and she's like, you know, have you got room for one more aboard? And you know, she's like, well, if you've ever seen the infamous Dawson crying meme, even if you've not watched the show, that is the moment where like Joey ultimately breaks Dawson's heart and is like, you know, well, he kind of gives her permission, which I hate, by the way, because Dawson just treats Joey like she's his property, which is like one of the many terrible things about Dawson. But he gives her permission to go be with Pacey, and you know, she takes it and literally runs to Pacey, and they get on the boat, the True Love, which is now very aptly named for, you know, USS Joey and Pacey. Poe, I think Poe is the ship name, Poe, USS Poe, to sail off into the sunset, literally. And that is the end of season 3. But yeah, we have, before they get together, there are many moments where Pacey is really there for Joey in a way that Dawson just can't really be, like the limitations of Dawson's sort of character. So for example, when Joey paints this mural for the school and it gets defaced, Pacey is just like there for her in a way that Dawson isn't, and like he kind of understands a lot of the nuances of the situation in a way that Dawson really doesn't. And that's, you know, this kind of like emotional maturity of Pacey is why Joey just kind of keeps coming back to him. So I think that I would be remiss if I didn't also explain that Pacey is just a very like romantic guy, even though it might not seem like he is, and that's one of the reasons why I'm just like heart for Pacey. So yeah, obviously Dawson is the one who's presented as like the romantic in the show. He you know, his very idealistic view of the world also extends to romance, and it causes like a lot of problems. So in season 1 he finds out that Jen isn't a virgin, and he's really like upset about that, and he has this like really black and white view of like romance and fairy tale endings, and like even with Jen, his first girlfriend, he's like, I need to create, you know, I need to orchestrate the perfect kiss. And yeah, he's very much in his head about all that stuff, whereas Pacey doesn't really have that. And we do see Pacey like contrasted to Dawson as like, even though Dawson is like obviously very horny and very like, you know, teenage boy, like Pacey is meant to be more so, like he's meant to be more kind of following his base instincts than Dawson does, and that's, you know, obviously why Pacey loses his virginity first. And you know, for that reason you might be forgiven for thinking that actually Pacey's not really very romantic, but I think that that's not true. You know, we see him treat all of his like girlfriends and love interests really well. You know, Tamara, he's really sweet with her. Andy, he treats her very like gentlemanlike, and Andy also loses her virginity to Pacey, and you know, they imply that like Pacey has kind of tried really hard to make that a romantic experience for Andy. When they have this really stupid episode in season 2 where what's her name? I think it's Abby something. She's like the kind of bitchy girl at the school who becomes friends with Jen. But I have this silly episode where they find a note written like from somebody to somebody else about like, you know, a first time together, and Abby takes it upon herself to like try and work out which couple it is, and it turns out that it was Pacey and Andy. But yeah, we especially see like Pacey like come into his own as this romantic character with Joey. And you know, there are a lot of really like beautiful moments as a result of that. So there's a moment where after Joey gets her mural ruined, Pacey like buys this wall for her, like a blank wall for her to like do another painting on, because he recognizes, like, you know, he wants to nurture Joey's gifts, which again is contrasted to Dawson in season 2, where Dawson finds out that like Joey's getting into like art and painting, and you know, he treats it like it's just a hobby, and he's very like dismissive and belittling of Joey. And you know, Joey's very much like, why is it that like when you love film it's like your life's passion, but when I love art it's just like this little insignificant hobby. But Pacey never does that to Joey, and he buys her this wall. And in probably one of the most iconic Joey Pacey moments of the show, he ends up writing on the wall, "Ask me to stay," when he's planning on leaving, and you know, he's still really fighting for like Joey's love. But yeah, Joey and Pacey, there are a lot more sweet moments. So one of them that really sticks out in my mind is when Joey and Pacey are dancing together, and he's like commenting on like a bracelet that she's wearing, and he remembers that it was like her mother's bracelet. And you know, she's like recalling the tale of like when he was like picking on her a little bit in kind of his light-hearted Pacey way, and she's like, "Oh, don't be mean to me today because I've lost my mother's bracelet or something." And you know, he says to her like, "I remember," you know, he says, "I remember everything," like, you know, he remembers every detail of this kind of relationship with Joey, because he's kind of always like had this torch for her a little bit, and it's very sweet and romantic. Okay, so I need to loop back to season 2 because I've just realised that I forgot a really important Pacey moment, which again is one of my favourite moments of the show. So this moment, I think it's a really incredible moment for Pacey's character, but there are parts of it that like I'm like, oh, it's a little bit, I don't know, problematic in some ways. I don't know. But basically, in season 2, Jack McPhee, you know, rumours start to circulate that Jack is gay, which he is. And the reason for this is that everybody had to write like a poem for a class. I think it must have been English class, and this is after Tamara has left the school, so it's a different teacher now. I cannot remember the name of this teacher, but all you need to know is that he's an older teacher and he's like a real bully. Like, he's a real old school. He likes to kind of humiliate his students, especially Pacey, obviously, who he thinks is like, again, he has this perception of Pacey as like a no-hoper. And yeah, Jack has written this poem, and he has to read it out in class. Like, he doesn't really want to, but the teacher makes him. And it's a really emotional, personal poem it's kind of about like a male figure in his life, and I think it's meant to be about the like difficult relationship that he has with his father, but it also has these quite like romantic and sort of sexual like undertones to it that feel, you know, not particularly straight. So obviously all the students are kind of, you know, getting a vibe, and anyway, Jack gets like really emotional and tearful. And, you know, Pacey, like, defends, like, you know, he's like, why are you making him do this? And, like, he basically, you know, he kind of tries to rush to Jack's defense. And the teacher, I can't remember the exact nature of their of their altercation, but the teacher's something like, you know, you're everything that, like, spits in the face of education. And then Pacey's like, no, this is spitting in the face of education. And then he spits at the teacher and leaves. And, you know, obviously Pacey gets into, like, huge trouble for this. And Jack is, like, not happy as well. He's like, you know, I didn't want you to rush to my defense. I think that, for me, so the the Pacey, Joey, Dawson love triangle has very much been likened to, by, I think, Kevin Williamson himself, in an article that I read. It's been likened to the sort of Arthur, Guinevere, Lancelot, with Pacey as this like Lancelot character, because he very much lives by this like strict honor code, but it's not kind of the honor code of the establishment. And, you know, also like in the love triangle, he is like the Lancelot figure that pulls Joey away from, you know, Dawson, Arthur, and like, you know, the status quo. So I am very biased in the fact that like one of my favorite like character like tropes or things that I love is when a character is very much, you know, they're doing something that is morally right, but it is going against the status quo in this kind of like noble knight kind of way. And I think Pacey like embodies that like all the time. Like, you know, he doesn't, and I think this is one of the reasons why he really kind of comes up against his father and his brother, because he's like, you know, just because something is like rule or law doesn't mean that it's right. And I really love that in a character. Like, Pacey has his own mind, he has his own moral code that he lives by. So this moment like really embodies that, and I just like, oh, it makes me it makes me swoon. But yeah, I just love it for all those reasons, but it just really like fits Pacey. Like he's very strongly believes in what's right, but it's just in a different way than like how Dawson does. So I think it kind of, apart from these really big moments, it kind of goes under the radar, and people think that Pacey doesn't stand for anything, but actually he does, and like he shows that all the time. So this is like a really great moment for that, and that just really kind of sums up a lot of Pacey's character. But yeah, Pacey does, I don't know if he gets suspended or, you know, like put on some kind of, you know, leave or punishment, but yeah, it kind of comes to like, they want him to apologize to the teacher, and Pacey's kind of like, yeah, I'll say that what I did was wrong, but like not why I did it was wrong. So I think that that's kind of, you know, he's kind of sticking to his guns, which I like. Yeah, and it's just another great Pacey moment. Yeah, so I think I'm kind of coming to the end of like, you know, why Pacey's just the best character ever moments. I'm gonna touch on something that I have a little bit earlier already, which is kind of that I think Pacey is a really great character for making the other characters examine their own like feelings and motivations and behaviors. I guess you call him like, even though he's a great character in his own right, he's kind of like a window character for them to sort of, you know, recognize what they're doing, what they're feeling, what they should be doing, what they're not doing, etc, etc. So I'm going to read a really great moment from, this is from towards the end of season 1. It's the what's the word, beauty contest that I referred to earlier, where Joey has entered the contest and Pacey's entered the contest, and this comes after Jen has like dated Dawson for a little while but broken up with him, and I think her reasons for doing this are a little bit muddy. Like, she mainly says to Dawson like, I've never really been without a guy, like I've always kind of like, you know, had a boyfriend or a guy in my life, and I need to be on my own, and that does cause some tension later on, where like she then goes on like a few dates with this guy called Cliff, who's like the sort of stereotypical like football player, like, you know, jock. But anyway, in the beauty contest, like, I'm not really a fan of this, but Dawson's starting to notice Joey for the first time as like an actual girl and not just like his friend, and it's in a very like cliche way that I'm not like super keen on, where it's like, oh, she's just like wearing some lipstick and a dress, and Dawson's like, oh crap, she actually like, you know, is a woman and still becoming a woman, which is like really, you know, stupid anyway, but like especially because Katie Holmes is like really gorgeous, and like even though they put her in this like, it's sort of like tomboyish clothing because she's meant to be a bit of a tomboy, but it's very like feminine tomboy clothing, like cute little crop tops and shorts and stuff. But you know, like she's always been stunning, so like, you know, her putting on all this stuff shouldn't really make any difference, but I think it's more meant to be like, you know, she's like generally presenting this different aspect of herself that Dawson's never really like, you know, thought about in connection with Joey before. But anyway, I'm going to read this quote, this exchange between Pacey and Jen that I have in my great little book with some quotes. So Pacey says, "Come on, Jen. I mean, it's pretty obvious that you're missing the undivided attention of our friend Dawson. Maybe you're feeling a little dumper's remorse." And Jen's like, "You're way off." Pacey, "Tell me, is it the possibility of losing him to somebody that suddenly makes him seem attractive?" Jen, "You really think I'm that shallow, huh?" Pacey, "No, I think you're that human." So I think this is like a really great exchange that again neatly sums up Pacey's character and kind of what his role ends up being to a lot of the other characters a lot of the time, which is to make them examine their own actual feelings. And I like that exchange because it features Pacey's empathy, and, you know, I think that comes out a lot more than like, you know, on the surface level it might seem, because again, Pacey's always joking around, he doesn't take himself seriously, and a lot of the time it like comes off like he doesn't take life very seriously until, you know, he starts to develop a bit more. So I think that for him to be really frank with Jen like that is like a really nice, it's a really nice conversation, and I think he presents it in like a really sort of gentle way. He's like, you know, he didn't think that Jen was being sort of, you know, selfish or fickle. He's like, no, I think that, you know, feelings are complicated, and, you know, I think that this is something that Dawson and Joey, but especially Dawson, are just not very good at doing. And Pacey like sees all the shades of grey, and like he knows life is complicated and messy, and it's nice to see him like, you know, serve this role of reminding the other characters of that. So yeah, I think there are probably a million more like big and small Pacey moments that I haven't even like thought to mention. But yeah, I think that kind of sums up why I think Pacey is really awesome, and I think Joshua Jackson like absolutely slayed the role. Apparently they even like by season 3 they were even jokingly calling the show like Pacey's Pond instead of Dawson's Creek, because like Pacey just like really shines and kind of steals the spot, even though I think James Van Der Beek did an incredible job as Dawson, and I just love all the cast. But yeah, I think he really shone, and he just had such a great character to work with. And if you haven't seen Dawson's Creek, I would absolutely recommend it. It's really fun. Obviously it's a little bit dated in places, but yeah, it's just a really great show. It's got some really great moments. It also, I have to include this as a little bit of fun trivia, but they also in season 1 put in a poster in the background of one of the classrooms of I Know What You Did Last Summer, which is one of Kevin Williamson's films, which I just love the kind of intertextuality of that and like a little bit of cheeky referencing. And they do a sort of scary Halloween-y type episode every season, which, you know, is obviously because Kevin Williamson just really loves that as a genre. And in fact, at the start of season 1, Dawson is making a kind of schlock horror film, so you can really see sort of Kevin Williamson's own interests coming into play there. But yeah, that is everything from me. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.